We are going live. And we are live. So hello everyone. Welcome. So nice to see you here. Hello everyone. So welcome to day 2 of the Wannabe CTO Bootcamp. You can say hi in the chat. Where are you coming from? Perhaps who enjoyed yesterday's session. If you want to share your experience for the newbie of the day, that's important. So yeah, come on down in the chat, say hi, your position, what you are doing. That's important, like to create like interaction. So Brittany back from Texas. So how is that? So I'm seeing like for now, almost people like were with us yesterday. So we have Denmark, Texas, and Bahrain. So super international. And Sophie, I told you that's an international station, and that's exactly the case.
That's amazing.
I'm Caroline. I'm founder of 15 Tech, and I'm really excited to see all of you. 15 Tech is the largest professional community for women in tech across Europe and US. It's totally free, and if you are not yet registered, you can create your network by matching with peers based on what you can provide and what you are looking for, access to meaningful discussion, resources such as Bootcamp or other events created by community member, and find some time when you need the right job opportunity with committed companies that featuring their gender data and D&I policies in transparency. We are totally on a mission to close the gender gap in tech. And one of the issues we want to solve with this bootcamp is that there is only 1% of female CTOs. But we know there is so much wannabe CTOs, perhaps you. So you can tell it in the chat. Perhaps you are already one, such as Anne-Sofie, or perhaps you really want to become one. So tell your ambition, share with us what do you want to achieve in your career. And we know that the industry is biased. That's not like a news. We know exactly that. But through this bootcamp, we want to give you the key to grow in your career by making perhaps the right choices, and nothing better than concrete stories from women who became CTOs. That's why I'm very proud today to welcome Anne-Sofie Nielsen, CTO at Peakon, leading their engineering and data science teams. She has a passion for helping people grow to the next level, and is always curious to learn and improve. Having started her career as a software engineer, she has since led product development at Capo Software and Kofax, and won multiple awards for her work as a CTO at online supermarket. Anne-Sofie will deliver an engaging session sharing how to prioritize inclusion as you scale, ensuring that your company values are embedded in your engineering and product teams. And from this session, you will take away meaningful way to support your tech teams, action to embed values as you scale, how to create environments that work for people, all people. That's important. That's inclusion. And after our masterclass, there will be a Q&A session. So Anne-Sofie needs to leave like 5 minutes before the end of the initial session. So feel free to ask questions, but really as fast as possible in the chat. I will pick them after the session, and then I will give you the next steps, the networking session that we will have after the masterclass. So Anne-Sofie, take it away. It's your time. You can share your screen and say hi to everybody.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So let me just share my screen here. Yeah, so good to see so many people from different places around the world. I have some time to spend with you to talk about how to scale your engineering team. I've chosen an angle that's not as technical, but really has people in focus. So I call this session Scaling Your Engineering Team with Values at the Core. I think that's really important. You know, what I'm hoping to get out of this talk, I really want to inspire you on how you can grow and scale your own engineering teams, and to do that in a way that's sustainable, that works for people, that's authentic to who you are as well, and that is inclusive to everyone who wants to be a part of that. And the things I'll go through in this session is, first of all, I'm going to talk a bit about my journey in tech. We all have different journeys, but maybe there's something in mind that resonates with, thoughts you have, ways to move into roles. I'm going to talk a bit about Peakon, where I work now, and our values, and then I'm going to go specifically into scaling an engineering team in a sustainable way. And I've also left quite a lot of time for Q&A because I'm sure you guys are interested in a host of different topics around this main area. So first of all, a little bit about my journey in tech. I studied computer science and engineering at the Technical University of Denmark. For a long time, I actually didn't know that I would necessarily end up in tech. I was always curious about lots of stuff. In high school, I loved like physics and French and lots of topics. So like, why IT? So this was before the, you can see I started in 1999. So there was a lot of internet hype starting at the end of the 90s. And I was lucky enough to have a friend when I was in school who introduced me to making web pages. Those were really, really basic at the time, just plain HTML and over time a little bit of JavaScript in there. And I was like, wow, this is like a whole new thing. And at the time, that was like mid-90s. Most people didn't know what the internet was, and they certainly didn't know how to program anything on the internet. So I kind of like that entrepreneurial feel of doing something that was new. And that was really what caught on with me. I think it took some years. When I was in high school, I was like doing web pages for small companies and things like that, just trying to learn on my own. And it wasn't until like at the end of high school that I actually realized, wow, IT could really be a career. And I looked at graphs and saw like the amount of IT related companies was growing. And I really felt that that was a place where there was a future and things that hadn't been invented yet. And I think that was what really attracted me the most. So I ended up studying computer science and engineering because I've always been the kind of person who likes to have a technical foundation for things that I do, or like the theoretical side as well. And I really enjoyed having both the practical and the theoretical side. I know a lot of people have different ways into IT. Some of them are less theoretical, so you kind of have to find a way for most people that fits with the way you like to learn and approach things. And I really enjoyed that, and I made some friends and got some good networks out of that. I think that's also something that's important, the people that you get to know when you study or when you go to work in IT, those are often the people that shape how you think about engineering, for instance, or what kind of companies you should be looking at to go to work at. I was eventually referred by a person I studied with to go work at Cto Software. That was a startup, international startup, but had roots in Denmark, and they were doing what's now called robotics process automation software. So things where you could automate interactions you would have with a web page. It was a small team, but it was a pretty smart bunch of people. I don't think I realized when I took the job how important it was to find a community that would teach me, the good practices of engineering. I think looking in hindsight, that was a really good company to be at because they had, a small but really good engineering team that taught me a lot of good principles. I really enjoyed being a programmer. I was there for 5 years working as primarily Java programmer, doing things like a web-based browser and lots of fun, really difficult technical stuff. I enjoyed the role as a software engineer, but after 5 years, also felt like I needed some kind of change. Was considering, should I move to a different company? What was kind of the next thing to do? And I was lucky enough that there were some changes going on in the company, and the CEO was on the lookout, it turned out, for a head of engineering for the team. And I think I'd impressed him by just stepping up and solving some tough customer cases, and also being vocal about things. I had a blog at a kind of news website for engineers, and I was just maybe a little bit more outspoken, I think, than the majority of engineers. And he also saw me as someone that was setting a direction for how he wanted the engineering team to work. So I got the opportunity to head up the team that I had been a part of, and that was really my first management role. Most of the times when you go into a management role, you get promoted within the company that you're in. It's often harder to go get a job as a new manager in another company because you're often competing with people who have prior management experience. Whereas if you're in a company already, they know you, and you have some existing knowledge and skills and relationships that you can leverage. Of course, it's a little bit challenging to change the relationship with some of the people that you've been working with. You've been their peer, and now suddenly you're their manager. I think it was also just slightly confused at the first couple months, maybe year, of what does a manager actually do? Like, how are you supposed to manage people that are smart and know a lot of stuff? I was also one of the youngest people in the team, so I was managing people that were way older than me. That was quite a change as well. But eventually I learned. I also actually took some leadership courses on the side because I felt I really, again, wanted that theoretical foundation for what was I doing. And that helped me progress in various roles within Cto software. And as it happens with a lot of startups, it got acquired by a bigger company, Kofax, that was a larger US-based company. And that's definitely an interesting transition to go through. I think many people have been through acquisitions. They can be quite different depending on what level of match you have between the two companies. I'll say that was definitely quite a surprise for me that they were doing things so differently. I think also maybe less agile than what I had been used to. So that was quite a learning experience. And even though I didn't always agree with the approach that the acquiring company had, I think I learned some things about, how do you manage risks and how do you communicate upwards and outwards in a larger organization to people that don't necessarily speak engineering. I think that's also been an important lesson on my journey, to be able to relate to people and communicate about the things that we're doing, why we're doing them, even if they don't understand the engineering side. I was also given the responsibility for the product side. There's often, those two functions quite close together, and I thought it was definitely interesting to not just look at engineering and how you build the product, but also why you build the product and, what are the important things to build out. So that was really interesting to work on. After some years there, I changed to Nemlig.com, which is a large online supermarket in Denmark, an online pure play. They had also been growing. They were growing out of lots of their systems. They were looking to in-house some of the engineering work that was going on. They had outsourced everything from the start, and now that was just really becoming a competitive advantage for them to be able to move quickly on the platforms they had. It's very interesting when you're in a company that's not a tech company, but trying to build a tech branch inside them. I think a lot of companies that are going through digitization today are facing that. They have internal IT systems. In the Nemlig case, it was things like logistics systems, ERP systems, but you're also trying to do things towards the customer where it's not just about efficiency, it's also about the user experience. And I thought that was pretty interesting. We did some huge projects of revamping user experience. One of the great things about e-commerce is that it's very easy to see the results of what you do. Like, do you sell more? Are the customers happier with the changes that you've made? So it's quite a growth business to go through, whereas both around building the organization to the needs of the company, but also making sure that we got the right technical partners in for systems that we were buying or co-developing. So that was a pretty interesting journey as well. And a few years ago, I then joined Peakon, that I'll be speaking a little bit more about. Peakon's actually just now gone through an acquisition by Workday, so that's another kind of next experience to go through. So I think there's been a lot of interesting things happening in my career. Peakon's again kind of back to a core tech company, and also being acquired by Workday, that's another tech company. So I'm kind of back in the pure tech space, which also has some advantages. Like, everyone understands that that's the most important thing in a company is to kind of get the product right. And yeah, that's been another interesting next part of my journey. I wouldn't say I've ever had really a career plan. I've gone for things that I thought were interesting and exciting, and over time I've learned more about, you know, what's exciting for me. I like innovating, I like doing new things, I like working with people and tech and business and trying to combine those three things. In general, I would say CTO roles can be very different. Some are not at all about people management. Some are very techy. Some are more, you know, focused on building teams. Some need to care about the product aspect of like, what are we building and why, and some don't. So, you know, that's a good thing as well. There are many different CTO roles. Some are more lead developer, especially in startups where you're very hands-on, where the kind of CTO roles that I have now are more about, you know, managing a team and making sure that the strategy is in place for the things that we want to do. So that was a little bit of whirlwind tour through some of the thoughts that I've been going through on my journey in tech. Now, a little bit about the company I work for now, which is called Peakon. So it's an intelligent listening platform that aims to capture what the employees are saying and really help drive execution and success in companies. So since our founders created the company, we've been working out of a belief that work should work for people. Like, we want to make workplaces better. And we've been partnering with forward-thinking organizations out there like Capgemini, this big consulting agency, Delivery Hero, which is a food delivering service, and, you know, some international companies that live around the world. And what we're trying to do with them is to help every employee drive the changes they want to see. So employees can give feedback through the tool that we create, and managers and leaders at all levels can see what's going on and, you know, what are employees happy about and where do they feel that there's an opportunity to drive action and change. We really want everyone to take more control of their career and of the success of the company, really being in the driver's seat of, you know, what is the direction they would like to see and how can we all support making a company successful and also building great work lives for people. So I try and encourage a lot of transparency and empowering of employees and really cultivate a good employee experience. So it's always been about building the company that we want to work for, and values are a huge part of that. So to put some of the next slides into context, let me talk through a little bit what the Peakon values are. So this is not really a hierarchy, but more building blocks. So one of my favorite values is serious, not seriously. So we're trying to do things in a fun way, even though we're, you know, being serious about our jobs. If we take ourselves too seriously, we're not going to innovate. We're not going to build for tomorrow. We want to be transparent about things so everyone can make the best kind of decisions. If people don't have the information, they can't make good decisions. So it's every manager's and the company's job to make sure that everyone understands what's going on and why we're making the decisions that we make. And then there's another favorite of mine, we care. So this is really about emotionally and intellectually connecting with people. This can be customers, this can be colleagues, but really showing empathy for the situation that people are in. You know, not assuming that if someone hasn't done a good job, it's because they don't care. Maybe there's something going on for them, and, you know, to help everyone really be successful. On top of that, we have some values that are really about innovating and doing more. We have one that's called Build for Tomorrow Today. So this is really thinking about how do we scale things in the long run, not just technically, not just organizationally, but also on things like process, ways that we work. How can we think about enabling our success tomorrow, today? A lot of startups, I think, are very focused on things that need to happen now, and they're not as focused, both from a technical and people perspective, on building things to last. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be agile and build things, you know, quickly and ready to adapt, but you need to think about what are the key cornerstones today that will get it right, and raise the bars a little bit alongside that. So it's about always thinking about how can we do things a little bit better, how can we maybe document things in a way that makes it easy for other people to take our work and build on that. And it's really about balancing operational excellence and innovation from now and going forward. I think many companies really swing between the two. If you look at an example like Apple, they were stuck for a long time before they came out with that wonderful iMac that just had a beautiful design and truly changed the world. And they did it again with the iPhone, and it's stunning technology and global supply chain. So I don't think innovation and execution excellence are each other's opposite. As a company, we really need to try and do both. And then on top of that, we have Be You, Be More, which is about everyone expressing themselves at work and being able to bring their true self to work. We know that people perform better if they feel they don't need to hide who they are, if they can bring out everything about them that they like and take that with them to work. So we try and marry all these values into who we are as a company. And I think it's very important when I look at my team, the engineering team, we need to build on that. We need to be innovating. We need to also drive that operational excellence in everything that we do. And we need to do it in a way that puts smiles on people's faces. So one of the things that teams often lose when they go on a scaling journey is actually their values or their culture or their true self. It can be very hard to replicate the feeling you had of being a 5-person team where you're suddenly 50 or 500 people. And I won't lie, I think scaling a team means that things will change, but it's extremely important to consider how you want to change and what culture you would like to create as you move forward. If you're interested in general in learning more about kind of the dynamics of a team that scales from, say, 5 to 10 to 50, then I really recommend this book, Team Topologies. I've been reading that just recently, and that's really an interesting small recommendation from here. There is a notion of something called Dunbar's number that talks about how the dynamics of teams change and what people can take responsibility for. I'm not going to go a lot into that in the presentation today because I really wanted to keep the focus on the values side, but there are clearly things in communication as well that change when you move to a certain number. So one of the first values I wanted to start with was the one I mentioned, that was raise the bar. So really always trying to do things a bit better than you did them yesterday. Now, fundamentally, engineers want to work with other good engineers. And as a startup, you don't necessarily have the luxury of doing things like employer branding and events. And you quite heavily typically rely on referrals from some of the first engineers that you hire and their ability to be someone that people in their network want to work with. Also, when you're in a startup phase, you may be struggling to pay people competitive salaries, and you may have to focus more on, for instance, the equity piece, creating exciting, meaningful products that change the world in a positive way, and to give people freedom to do great work and use the breadth of their skills. So I think it's really about finding out what is unique that you have to offer to candidates, and it's probably not going to be salary when you're scaling, but maybe it's something else. And then comes a point usually where, as a startup, you go to the scale-up phase and you've secured some funding, maybe several rounds of funding, and oftentimes companies want to use that funding to scale the team. And you may have set yourself some ambitious hiring goals that can be hard to fulfill then. And one of the things I've seen people do is they often start to hire B players just because they get a little bit desperate. And I really can't emphasize enough how important it is to having like a high bar for who you hire. Now, I would emphasize it doesn't mean that you only have to hire super senior people, and at the top end of the salary range. I think I've personally successfully hired several talented junior people who were maybe straight out of university, but really taking people where the talent is of the essence. So one thing I really have enjoyed about Peakon is that we take pride in involving team members in the decision on candidates. They bring in different perspectives than the manager does, and it also gives candidates a really good impression of the people they will be working with, and allow them to ask, more in-depth questions about the day-to-day experience of working as an engineer in one of our teams than we would if it was just managers interviewing. So that's a recommendation from here. Now, Build for Tomorrow today, another one of favorite values. My experience is that it's a lot easier to build a good engineering culture and quality focus in from the start, rather than trying to kind of frantically bolt them on at a later stage when you're on the journey of maybe rapidly adding more functionality, or you get to the point where you meet the requirements from larger organizations as you move up market, and they will have strict requirements on things like security or quality. Get some of that started initially. I think Peakon was always lucky that 3 out of 4 of the founders had computer science backgrounds, so they knew how important this was. I've seen a lot of other organizations that have struggled as they realized that was maybe something they should have done from the start. I mean, good practices like building automated tests and making a deployment journey quick and easy, that allows you to iterate quickly with confidence. So it's really not the opposite thing of speed. Especially see organizations sometimes that choose the outsourcing approach sometimes forget to think about not just what features they want out, but also how they want them built so they get a sustainable setup. Many companies on a growth journey will eventually take a large investment or get sold. And in both cases, there's typically a due diligence process on the technical side. And it can be quite costly on the valuation if investors are looking to have to rebuild part of the product from scratch. So you want to avoid that. At Peakon, we have our own in-house engineering teams in Copenhagen and London. And we make sure to invest in putting technical projects on the roadmap too, to continuously improve our tooling, developer productivity, and scalability. The analogy I sometimes use to explain to people why we do it is, thinking of maintaining a house. If you continuously address some of the issues that arise, like paint the house when it needs to, or fix a hole in the roof, it's pretty manageable. But if you ignore the problems, they will grow bigger, and suddenly you no longer just have a hole in the roof, you have a moisture problem in the ceiling too, right? So that's really a key part of it. I would also say that sometimes you have to kill your darlings. Maybe you even made a solution at some point that you were really proud of at the time, but if it's not fit for purpose anymore, you have to let it go. I see some engineers struggle with this, and it's an important process to guide them through. It doesn't mean that their previous work was bad. It's just that the requirements change over time as you scale and you build more features. We also really want to empower everyone to drive the change they want to see. If someone spots a problem, they should be given the flexibility to address it and try new ways of doing things. And while top-down direction can certainly be needed, teams generally feel a lot more ownership of their own solutions and experiments. And this is really where leadership comes in. It's about role modeling the values and making the company and department goals clear for everyone so they can use their best judgment in working towards those. I would also say that when scaling engineering teams, it's easy to get lost in focusing on the headcount and the people management and the technical scaling challenges. But processes and communication are also 2 very important topics to deal with when scaling. When you're maybe 10 people, everyone generally tends to know what's going on, what's important, who will take that incoming bug they need to fix urgently. And there's probably also a CTO or a lead developer who has a complete overview of everything. That's just nice, right? But at some point when you scale, some of that just breaks down. Nobody has a full overview. Everyone thinks that someone else is going to deal with that incoming issue, and you might be working on differently prioritized initiatives. This is where you really need to think about introducing processes and more deliberate communication. And that can be quite a wake-up call for a team that used to be able to handle things in a completely agile, non-bureaucratic way. And you need to be thoughtful and clear in your communication about what is being introduced and why you're introducing it. For instance, at Peakon, we have a rotating tech trooper role that takes a first pass at all incoming bugs so the rest of the team can keep focused on their planned tasks without too much interruption, as we know that context switching can be a real productivity killer. We also have regular tech talks that are a great vehicle for sharing knowledge between teams. And we've also recently started an internal engineering blog where we share updates about new and exciting stuff that's going on in like data science labs, and I get to share some of my perspectives on things like career progression. And I also just wanted to take the Be More and talk a little bit about that, because I think we want to bring in people who are excited about and want to live the Peakon values in our case. But we don't just want to bring in people that are clones of our existing people. So that's why we try and talk more about culture add than culture fit. We really want different perspectives and insights on the exciting challenges and problems that we solve. And to do that, we work closely with our talent team to proactively source people from different backgrounds, using both direct sourcing and partnerships with sources of diverse talent. And that helps us with the kind of top of the funnel problem. And on top of that, we have reviewed and we reworked our recruiting processes to support inclusive hiring, for instance, by putting everyone involved in recruiting through mandatory inclusive interviewer training. I would also really like to mention that one of my pet peeves is when people use the phrase the ideal candidate in job postings, where they always describe something that nobody can live up to, and they typically have a very fixed idea of what good looks like. And in many cases, in reality, that doesn't have too much to do with the actual job performance. And I think that can scare a lot of people away, especially from underrepresented groups and women who may feel like they're already struggling to feel good enough at work. So that's an important point. We're very serious about doing a great job and making sure that we have an amazingly skilled team, but I believe that work is also supposed to be fun, and we should be able to make friends and enjoy ourselves while we do what we do best and really bring our full selves to work. I think we must carefully change our assumptions about other people over time. I had really young children, and I was working slightly less than full-time when I got offered my first management position. So I'm personally really glad that people around me could see that my personal circumstances didn't mean that I was less ambitious than I otherwise would have. It's so easy to make assumptions about other people, like, the mother of small children, she probably doesn't want a management position, or this single guy can probably work late today because he can't possibly have any important commitments, And the final point I wanted to make was around freedom. You hire people because you trust them and you believe that they'll do a good job. I think it's important to embed that trust early and have mechanisms in place to support people who may need extra help. And one of the things we've used quite a lot is like buddy systems, mentors, well-prepared managers who can help all their teammates along the journey. Management training is typically a really good investment once you start growing to having more than just a few managers on the team. And really to emphasize not micromanaging people. Your job is to surround yourself with people who are passionate and who are skilled in the areas that you hired them for. Yeah, so that was what I had prepared. I deliberately wanted to leave quite a lot of time for questions because I'm really curious to understand where you're coming from, what are the things that are on your mind, and really spend more of the time on that as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anne-Sofie. And we have already a lot of questions. So I will start with your value because I think it was first the topic, and they are like really impressive. A lot of people are commenting in the chat saying, wow, what amazing values that you have. And we have a first question from Sylvia. So those values are so fantastic. I have been following Peakon for a while because of them. Did you see a minor gender gap since this was implemented? Did it come from you, or was it already there? And what it really caught you in the first place?
Yeah. So I would say the values were already there when I joined, and they were one of the primary reasons why I joined, because the first time the recruiter called me about the position, I was like, wow. I was looking it up and reading on the website. I was like, this company sounds amazing. So that was really what caught my interest. And I can see that's something that's resonated with a lot of the candidates that I've spoken to over time. I think it really, the fact that they were also inclusive and kind of sending a signal of us being welcoming to other people, I think that opens up for people to feel like maybe that this is a place where I belong, where it's not just about, a tough environment. I think over time, as I've grown in my career, I've been definitely very much aware of the kind of working environment that I thrive in. And I think that was probably when I first left university, that wasn't something I thought about a lot. And I think once you've tried working in a couple of different companies, you have more of an idea of, what's the right kind of company for me. So I especially see people who are more on the senior side being more aware of this now that they probably tried, 1 or 2 or 5 companies, and some of them were good and some were not. So yeah.
Another question from Lizzie. How important do you feel your theoretical background has been in your career for working, for example, for working innovation and cutting edge tech? So not your technical, but theoretical background.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it also depends on who you are. Like, I personally draw a lot of confidence from that, but I think it doesn't mean that other people couldn't be successful without that. This just because that's the kind of foundation I like to have. That's my approach to things. I like to research the theoretical side of it. So I think it helps me to feel good. It does help over time, sometimes to have conversations with smart tech people. There are some things that I can relate, but I've also seen people be successful with lots of different backgrounds, and they have some other strengths that they can play to. So I think it's also about taking us out of the mindset of like there is one perfect profile for a role. Like, we all bring different things in, and then you have to make sure that your team, reflects what are the competencies that you need to add to be a perfect team.
Very clear. Another question from Anusua, and if I'm not telling you right your name, please, you can spell it, and it will be like for my personal culture for after. So since you already changed managerial positions within the company and as well in different companies, what are the major differences did you notice between changing positions inside a particular company and joining a new company in a quite similar position, and also being a woman in tech?
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting, because when you move up or like to a management role that's higher up in the hierarchy in your current company, you're building on the context that you have and the understanding of how does the company work. You have some existing relationships. Maybe your role changes. For instance, maybe you become a manager of managers. So like some of the content changes, but you don't need to spend time understanding the context or building as many new relationships. Where if you move to a different company, you have to start by establishing yourself. Like, who is Anne-Sofie? What can she do? And is she even good at this job? And, what kind of direction is she taking it in? So I would say the times where I've changed jobs, I've had to spend more time communicating, what is my vision with what I'm trying to do, where more of that was a little bit implicit when I was moving roles, because people already had a sense of who I was and what kind of direction I would be driving in. So, be more aware of the communication, really, if you move to a different company.
Yeah, that's really important. A question from Ivona. What's your experience with balancing power dynamics in companies that have offices in different countries? Specifically, for people, when people start referring colleagues from previous companies that they were worked for and quickly gain a lot of power inside the company. What is the best way to restore the balance in this situation? So it's a lot of political and groups question.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anything bad in having like a close-knit team of people that know each other and work together really well, and some of those come from referrals. I think you need to be aware of it, that is excluding other people. Like, is it better to be part of the group that knew each other? Then you probably want to maybe split that up or start questioning as they bring in more people, like, is that the right thing to do? And are they really able to manage the power dynamics of that? Because what you don't want to do is, someone comes in from Acme company and then it's like the Acme clique within another company. That's definitely to be avoided. The other thing I heard in this question was really offices in different countries. And I think that's one of the most difficult parts of managing. I've had people in the Netherlands, in Ukraine, in Russia, in UK, in Denmark, and understanding exactly how people work in different countries is more difficult than you think. Like, you think, oh, they speak English and we do computer science and engineering, should be all the same, right? But it's not really. They have different expectations of you as a leader, and things that you communicate may be interpreted differently based on the cultural context. So one of the most important things there, I would say, is to have people that you have trust in and that will tell you if you get it wrong. So, the worst thing is if you get it wrong, you don't know that you got it wrong. So that's probably the best thing, to like build relationships with people who will tell you when you've done something that's like not sitting right with the culture, because you're not always going to get that right.
So Mariette is asking an advice. Every time I have to recruit a new engineer, I think you are not alone, Mariette, but the candidates were overwhelmingly white, 30-something, middle-class, educated men. Any advice on how to reach a wider audience, except being featured on 15 Tech, Mariette? So.
Featured Tech, yeah. An easy way to start, I think, is the job ads. We had one of our male engineering managers who took on the task of kind of rewriting some of the job ads we had. So they were more focused on what is the content of the job, like who will you be working with, what will be the things you'll be working on, rather than being very strict on, like, we expect you to be in a certain way and look in a certain way. There are also bias checkers available. They can check your language for bias language. They're not perfect, but they can still give you a little bit of a hint. And then also, look at where you're posting the job. Like, if you're posting a job board, it's like, get into dialogue with them and say, like, what does it look like? What are your demographics? Don't spend your money places where the demographics are off. There are local communities around, with women in tech, etc. Like, you have to do a bit more of an investment, I think, to fix the funnel, unfortunately. But also really think about instilling confidence in the candidates, because there are a lot of great people out there who don't apply because for one reason or another they think, oh, I'm not going to be good at this, right?
Totally. And so many women. So we need to them, but company need to be more welcome also. So that's not all the fault.
And also think about, when you do get them in, who do they meet? Do they then meet all like white 30-year-old males? Are they going to be feeling included in that experience? Which can be a bit of a bootstrap problem if that's who you have in your team, but you can try.
Yeah. Another question from Manana. Do you think I can become a CTO without a computer science degree? How to fill the knowledge gaps without going back to university?
Yeah, I've definitely seen CTOs that don't have computer science degrees. I personally feel that having, for instance, been a developer has been a good background also for understanding the work that goes on. Again, there are many different CTO roles. Some are very, very technical. Some are more on the people management side, which you can fill it out without necessarily having a lot of that experience on the technical side. There's also the part about understanding the business requirements, and maybe you came in with, the business experience instead, or something else that can make you a unique CTO for the company you work in.
So we have a question of, so it's budget and money for Paola. One of the aspects of the CTO role that scares me the most is the budget management, as it is the farthest from my software developer role I'm used to. How much of your job as a CTO is dealing with budgets, and how did you grow on this topic?
Yeah. So I would say it differs quite a lot for different CTO roles, how much budget management there is. Like, typically you will have a headcount budget. Like, maybe you have 10 people in your team, and maybe there's a plan to hire 2 more next year. And that's pretty simple to deal with. In other examples, you might have technology costs. It can be like, infrastructure in AWS that you have to kind of manage, or it can be spent on things like team events. It's not that dissimilar to skills that you need to have if you're managing your own personal budget. You can take, if you want, like a few basic crash courses online or offline in just reading budgets, or get someone from the finance department in your company to sit down with you a little bit and explain how that works. It's money that you spend, so I think we're all familiar with spending money and understanding how that affects our bottom line. So it's not really that dissimilar. Maybe sometimes companies use a lot of abbreviations, talk about EBITDA and what have you. And spending a little bit of time maybe with someone from the finance team or someone else that can just explain what does that actually mean can really help to demystify things.
So we have 4 questions more, and we have only 10 minutes, so we need to go fast. So, question from Thomas. Amazing talk. Thank you very much. You mentioned a leadership course that help you getting good foundations. Could you tell us a bit more about it? Any course you will recommend?
Yeah, so I would say the one I took was actually in Danish because it was part of CPH Business. They have like a diploma in leadership academy thing that I took. I know locally there are lots of different ones. Some are online, some are offline. A lot of companies also have leadership or talent programs, so maybe it's worth it, just start by investigating if your own company has some kind of program you can join. I don't have any specific recommendations, but there's like a bunch of stuff. Some unions or like career clubs and things also have.
Okay, and we'll try to find some for you, Thomas, and you can find it on 15 Tech. We will have a look with the team. Joanna, in your experience, what have been the differences between the CTO and CIO roles? So Chief Innovation Officer, Chief...
Yeah, or Chief IT Officer. Actually, when I was in Emily.com, that was called a CTO role, but in practice, it was more CIO, so IT. So typically, the CTO title is more used in tech companies where it's about building the product that they sell, and CIO is often more internal facing, like running the IT systems that support the company, and that's not necessarily a tech company. So my first recommendation would be read the job description, because people are not always really stringent about what kind of titles they use. Typically, the CIO roles are a lot more about things like project management, budget management, and a little bit less tech focused than the CTO roles.
Yeah. Another question from Ula. So great input, thank you very much. But how do you deal with scarcity in the tech pool in London? I think it's one of the Brexit effect. How do you attract and retain in a so tiny market and with a talent shortage that we are facing all?
Yeah, I mean, I have a good recruiting team that I can work with that go out proactively and tap people on the shoulder, primarily on LinkedIn. Some people do events and things like that. We do referrals quite a lot. So, getting referrals from people that already know someone that they work with in the past is a really good thing. Depending on the size of your company, there's employer branding, going to events and trying to tell the story about why your company is a good place to work is really important.
And we have like 2 more questions. So from Roida, things go great when you have a constant job, but once you have your own company, it's not easy to maintain the success no matter what experience you have. What do you think I should the way forward? So it's an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And good for you. That's an avenue I personally haven't explored, so I'm not sure I have that great advice for you. But I think it's definitely some interesting experiences that you can bring. Even, just whether you stay in your current company or you eventually move into someone else's company, just having to try and deal with the breadth of different things which you have to do as an engineer, I think is going to be a strength for a management role going forward.
And another question from Amira. Hello, what would you be your advice? No, what would your advice be for women in tech who are seen as less than men in the company, even they have like exactly the same skills? So it's a question of bias.
I think it's definitely, speaking up and also maybe getting people to help you to speak up. Maybe some of the men also see that that is unfair. Build some good relationships to people and raise the topic. A lot of companies try and ignore it and pretend like the problem doesn't exist. So the more that employees can really voice the problem, I think that's the only way forward.
Okay, I have a last question, so I will take that one. Yeah, Sylvia, I didn't forget to ask. So cultural challenges are so important. How did you learn how to deal with cultures where maybe you don't have the insights, how to create the understanding, and how to mitigate the feelings that some cultures automatically await on us? Which would make so much sense if we understand the culture where they come from.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to do my research, right, trying to get the theoretical foundation. You can look up like Hofstede's culture maps of, the different work cultures as a starting point, but also spend some time talking to people there. I would also just like to do another book recommendation. I love books. This book, Fish Can't See Water, which is really about how it's very hard to see your own culture, but it actually quite affects how you work and companies that you work in. That was an interesting book I read some years back.
Great.
Sorry, I'm a book person.
Yeah, you're totally a book person. I'm sharing with the audience. So thank you so much. This was the last question. Really, a lot of inputs, insight, and advice during this session. Thank you very much, Anne-Sofie. Stay with me like 1 minute because I will explain. So you can, if you want to add like a final word, you can do it now if you want, and then I will explain what you do after.
For all the great questions. It was really nice that it was so interactive and not just me talking to slides the whole time. That was great. You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. I'll try to follow up on any questions that you guys didn't get the answer to.
Great. So thank you very much, Anne-Sofie. And so I will keep you like 1 minute more explaining to you all what we will do next. So I will stop sharing my screen. So the session will be off, and then I will invite you to join the session if you want to be like 20 people chatting together face to face, or the networking tool if you want to do like one-on-one chat in 3 minutes with your peers. So it's your option, you choose. I will be in the session just to make like the moderation and so on, but you can do on your own with a one-on-one. So thank you very much, Anne-Sofie. And for you all, at 3:30 CET, we will have Julie Carrière explaining how to pimp your LinkedIn profile, how to pimp your resume to become like lead manager, CTOs. So you saw the amazing resume of Anne-Sofie, exactly the same, but we will put like great insight. She's HR manager at Singular, a really great company with a female CEO and an amazing ratio of 50-50 people. And she will give you a lot of advice. So thank you very much, and bye-bye. J'ai coupé.